Welcome to Wandering Jews at J Squared Adventures. Travel far enough and you meet yourself.
We're your hosts. I'm Scott.
I'm Sorrel. Symbols have a unique power. They become so strongly associated with a culture, a people, that over time we don't stop to think about their origins or evolution at all. Take the kilt, for example. When you think of a kilt, you probably picture the rolling hills of Scotland, bagpipes, and the proud heritage of the Scottish people. But the kilt as we know it today emerged in the 16th century, grew in popularity, and changed in design through the 18th century. It was only with the development of a modern Scottish nationalism in the 19th century that the kilt became an inseparable vision of all things Scottish. It's a reminder that symbols don't always have the same meaning from the moment they're created. They grow, change, and take on new layers of significance.
I think that's a really good point. It's taking an image from a very faraway place. And if we bring it home a little bit, the same is true for the symbols we associate with the Jewish people and with Judaism. We interact with symbols every day. A lot of times we take them very much for granted. They shape our identities. They influence our actions. We fight over them and for them. They shape our sense of belonging. They're not just relics. They're anchors to our past and bridges to our future. They carry with them the weight of personal and collective stories. I mean, think about Jewish symbols that each one of us might choose. You know, things like Shabbat candles.
Right.
I mean, it pops into my mind right away, a vision of my mother, kind of as a teenager, you know, being in the house together with my younger sister, lighting candles on Friday night.
We take it for granted, but
We
it's
take
so
it for
powerful,
granted.
that visual.
Yeah. What other symbols would you think of, Sorrel?
Well, we're recording this a week away from Hanukkah.
Good.
So I'm thinking the menorah.
Apropos candles.
Yes, that is very much, you know, like a visual representation of something that is on display throughout the year. A talit, for example.
Good, the prayer shawl.
Yes, these are symbols. The mezuzah.
Good, right? The door sign that we place on the entrance to Jewish homes and institutions.
Correct.
The Lion of Judah, right? Apropos
Another
Jerusalem,
great
it
one.
even appears on the sewerage. Do you call them manhole covers today? Person hole covers in the streets of the city. The Lion of Judah emblazoned in the lowliest of places.
Right. And when we think about these Jewish symbols, so I mentioned the menorah. The Bible talks about the menorah back in Shemot in connection with the building of the tabernacle, which is a portable carrying sanctuary that sheltered the tablets of the law and the Ark of the Covenant. In Second Temple times, we see the menorah on coins, on mosaic floors, and even in a wall decoration in a home in Jerusalem's aristocratic Western Hill, today's Jewish quarter of Second Temple times. Most famously, the menorah appears as part of the war booty stolen by the Romans and taken back to Rome on the Victory Monument marking the fall of Jerusalem and the Roman repression of the Great Jewish Revolt in 70 CE. And like you said, the state seal of the State of Israel includes a menorah flanked by olive branches on each side.
So we mentioned so many things which I think are so familiar. Shabbat candles, the prayer shawl, the talit, the lion, the symbol of the tribe of Judah, the menorah. But we're leaving out one which is almost so obvious, maybe that's why we didn't mention it yet, the so-called Star of David, the pointed star, the hexagram. So when we look at the hexagram today, I mean, immediately the Star of David, the Jewish people, the flag of the State of Israel. But it wasn't always so. And like everything, there's a question of context and development and history. When does the Star of David become
A thing.
the Star of David?
Right.
Associated by the Jews, for the Jews, with the Jews.
Until today.
Up until today. There's a site right outside of Jerusalem, an archaeological site called Ein Yael. It's about 5 miles away from the old city.
Near the zoo, right? Near the
It's
biblical
not
zoo.
far from the zoo, exactly. It's right beyond the train tracks, on the other side of the train tracks. And it's a Roman plantation and villa. There were no Jews there when this place stood. 2nd century CE, it's after the Bar Kokhba revolt, which means Jews were not allowed to live in Jerusalem or in the land of Judah. This was a Roman, wealthy villa, gorgeous mansion, bathhouse. On the bathhouse floor, to the surprise of the archaeologists who uncovered the site in the late 1980s, was a mosaic floor with triple twisted row patterns. The row pattern formed a hexagram in the middle of the floor, a 6-pointed star, that almost by reflex we say, wow, Star of David. But wait a second, we know that Aniel was not inhabited by Jews, both because of the artifacts unearthed there, and because we know, as we said, following Bar Kokhba revolt, it was actually illegal for Jews to live in Jerusalem and in the area of Judea. So hexagrams can be found at all kinds of sites all throughout the land of Israel and the Mediterranean, including at several 3rd and 4th century synagogues and churches. This was an element of design in the Roman world which really didn't have any specific religious or cultural meaning.
Another example is on the inside of the 16th century Old City walls of Jerusalem, right? And next to the New Gate, there are 2 hexagrams there.
It's not far from City Hall and from the Notre Dame.
Correct. And there's also another example is known in Islam as a seal of Solomon, with the Jewish people's connection to Jerusalem is wishful thinking.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the inside of the gates of the old city, it's exactly that. It's the seal of Solomon. We know that the walls of the old city that we see today were built by the Ottoman Turks, and they incorporated into it different key design elements, which were popular in their own day. Next to the Lion's Gate, we have lions. Not lions of Judah. They're just lions. And next to the New Gate, of course, what we look at and say, oh, the Star of David, but what in Islamic art is known as the Seal of Solomon. We know that in the Ottoman Empire, this became a symbol which was widely used. There was a famous Ottoman pirate, and later he was the admiral of the Ottoman Navy, and he flew a green flag that had on it, again, Stars of David, the hexagram, intertwined. The flag of Morocco displays 5-pointed stars, another version of this Seal of Solomon. So wait a second, Jews and Muslims, 5 stars, 6 stars. This is really quite a twisted history. So wait a second, when did the thing actually begin to become connected with Jews?
Right. And we also have, in the Hindu belief, right, the 6-pointed star called the Sadkona Yantra. And the hexagram symbolizes the balance between the divine and the human. And it also refers to the embodiment of feminine and masculine. So we're looking at this journey of the Star of David. And, you travel from India to Spain. Look carefully, because you may be greeted by a 6-pointed star in a Hindu temple or an Islamic mosque. But in these widespread cases, this common geometric symbol has no connection with the Jewish people.
Yeah, and again, it's really common, the kinds of the stories, the legends, common belief that we share. It tells a story, Star of David. Well, this was a shield that was used by ancient Jewish warriors, by King David, by the Maccabees, by Bar Kokhba. But you know what? There's no textual reference and no archaeological evidence that suggests that Jews during the First and Second Temple periods, the time of the Bible and the time of Hellenistic Roman control over this part of the world, there's no evidence that the hexagram was distinctly Jewish symbol.
You do have the term Magen David, which is in the Talmud and refers to, the God of Israel as a shield of David, but it's not a physical object, let alone a battle shield, right?
So it's only really in the 14th century, 2,400 years after the period that we connect with King David and the kingdom of Judah, that the hexagram emerges as a Jewish symbol, not in the land of Israel, but in Central Europe, in Prague. And during that period, the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles IV, granted the Jews of Prague the right to carry a flag, a red background, and a hexagram that became known as Magen David,
You can
the
see
shield
it.
of David.
Right, you could see it in the Altnu shul, right?
That's right. That's right. At least a facsimile of it. And this historic synagogue, which was connected with Rabbi Yehuda Lowy and the Legend of the Golem, you might remember that episode. If you don't remember it, definitely check it out. Red flag, the Star of David in the center, and a little medieval pointed Jewish hat displayed below the words, Shema Yisrael.
And someone who we've mentioned before in that episode, Gershom Sholem, in connection to the Golem of Prague, he suggests that mysticism emerged as a central branch of Jewish scholarship, particularly in Muslim Spain and Safat. It was through the lens of Jewish mysticism that Jewish scholars began to interpret the hexagram, the Seal of Solomon, from a Jewish vantage point. And Jewish legends from the time told stories of David fighting off demons using the six-pointed star, and that an amulet bearing the Star of David served both David and his son, Solomon.
A little bit later in the 19th century, as Jewish communities in Europe were struggling to gain equality, civil rights, break down the ghetto walls, the process that we know as the Emancipation. And obviously the Christian cross was everywhere, on churches, on monuments, on public buildings from Budapest to Madrid. Little by little, the Star of David slowly emerged as a popular symbol, a kind of a calling card for a new Jewry released from the ghetto in a new Europe.
And of course, that does take us to darker times with the rise of fascism, Nazism, and the onslaught of the Holocaust. In the late 1930s, the Nazi regime compelled Jews to wear the Star of David as a badge of shame and to mark each and every Jew as a target. So it took on an insidious meaning, the Star of David, at that time, because it signaled the failure of the Enlightenment and the retreat from everything that had been accomplished with the emancipation. It was tarnished in a sense.
Yeah, very much so. And that part of the story is the historic parallel happening at the same time at the end of the 19th century and through the early part of the 20th century with the rise of the Zionist movement, the aspiration that the Jewish people, like every other nation, like every other people, would have the right to self-determination, would establish a home for themselves in some part of their historic homeland, in the land of Israel. Zionism chose the Star of David in order to create a new flag at the First Zionist Congress convened by Theodor Herzl in Basel in 1897. Already a year before the Congress, Herzl had proposed a flag with a white background, representing the fresh start of the Jewish people as a free people in their own land. 7 golden stars would adorn that flag, 1 for each hour of the working day. And there was this idea, this aspiration of building a country based on ideals of liberalism and the rights of working people. It's just very simple. A black and white sketch of this proposed flag appeared as an entry in Herzl's diary.
And then we have the addition of the 2 blue stripes. And that was a flag that was flown in Tel Aviv in May 1948, when the Declaration of State of Israel, as David Ben-Gurion and the People's Council, once they declared the State of Israel, those 2 blue stripes represents the traditional, as we were talking about the Talit, the traditional Jewish prayer shawl.
In some ways, bringing together, again, this older symbols, traditional symbols, with new Jewish symbols, one could say. With the emergence of the State of Israel also, and this kind of new bolstered sense of ethnic politics and consciousness in the United States, the wake of civil rights, black nationalism, the Star of David came out of the closet. And it could be seen in synagogues. It could be seen in Jewish schools, community centers, but it could also be seen on people. Necklaces, bracelets, T-shirts, even baseball hats. All of a sudden, it was not enough to be part of the melting pot, but each ethnic group having the sense that, hey, we want to say who we are, and we want to do that in a public way. And for many, many Jews, displaying the Star of David in one way or another was a way to represent that identity and the pride of public display.
And, you know, we've kind of traced the history of the Star of David. And if we look at the Star of David and what it means to us today, Well, first of all, there's different aspects to it, right? Because it symbolizes our connection to the generations before us. And as we've spoken about what it meant, both in positive ways, and then it was used obviously in a horrific way as a badge of shame during Nazism and the Holocaust. But if we're looking at the theme, the connecting theme, it connects, a central motif is that it connects us to the ongoing fight for justice and what it means to be Jewish in the world today. You know, the way that Jews will choose to employ and display the Star of David as a central Jewish symbol. It remains to be seen both because of external pressures and hostilities and events going on in the world, but also because of an internal dialogue about how we want to present ourselves to ourselves.
For sure. And so like the story of the Jewish people, we travel today from Scotland to Spain, Morocco, Rome, throughout the Ottoman Empire, the land of Israel in the ancient past, Israel today. Our symbols have traveled with us and the Star of David. The symbols have changed over time. That there's no doubt. We've changed over time, and the symbols have changed with us. And, you know, one can't help thinking of that verse from the Grateful Dead. What a long, strange trip it's been. And now, something for the road. A tip, a recommendation to help you make every journey your own.
Hi, I'm Tzvi Levron, and I'm a tour educator for J Squared Adventures, and this is my something for the road. So when I introduce myself, I say to folks, hello, my name is Tzvi Levron, and I'm an Israeli tour guide, an Israeli tour educator. And you know what? I wasn't always Tzvi Levron. In fact, in my personal journey, I used to be something very different. Bob Leverich somehow became Tzvi Levron. How does Robert Leverich from Long Island, New York, become an Israeli tour educator named Tzvi Levron? I've been in the country 44 years. I've been involved in Jewish education with Israeli youth in the army and with high school kids, teaching, guiding since 1988. And I still think I'm on my journey. That 44-year journey is still happening. And when I think about a book that could be a helpful hint for the road, my thoughts went to those who are going through journeys, those for whom their visit here is a powerful, meaningful journey. I'm a teacher, I have a BA, I have an MA, but I don't feel like I'm an academic scholar, and that's not what we bring to the table necessarily. I mean, we study, we learn, we prepare, but I think what we do bring to the table, what I personally feel I can bring to the table is informal educational skills or non-formal educational skills. How do we make a trip, a visit, me feel like something much deeper? And in that sense, I was drawn to the book called Walking the Bible, A Journey by Land Through the 5 Books of Moses by Bruce Feiler. It was published in 2001, so it's a little old. He talks about the problems of dealing with territories and transportation, and it wasn't always so easy for him at the time to get around the country, because when we talk about walking the Bible, we're not only walking in the land of Israel and our sites, we're talking about, in his case, beginning from Armenia and the Ark, Noah's Ark. Where is Noah's Ark? In many points along the book, as he goes from book to book and experience and sometimes hair-raising experience, it's told beautifully, really like a novel, like an adventure story, in a way that's not academically dry. And that's what we try to do when we visit, because it's not about academia. It's about connecting to not history, not his story. Obviously, it's a cliche, but it is a meaningful phrase. We connect to our story, not his story, our story. And that's what Bruce Feiler does. He talks about his childhood and how he went to synagogue and hears comments about the Bible, and he says, I know those words, but I can't connect it. And doesn't speak to me. And I really should know more about that, he says. And then, since he does like writing books and is a successful author, he writes this adventure story, which is basically walking through the Bible. And it's a fantastic, gripping adventure story on the one hand, but most importantly, as it affects him. He talks about the struggle of our forefathers or foremothers. And he says, how did they come to an answer? And then he realizes at some point, he says, the struggle is maybe the answer, not trying to find a specific answer. And then he talks about the notion of Moses not being able to come into the promised land. What a moment. Oh my God. There he is standing on that Mount Nebo looking at the land of Israel and then being told by God he can't come into the land. And he says, wow, what an incredible privilege for me to be able to explore the land. So that's how we feel when we live here. And that's how we feel when we try to share the land with our visitors. And to add one last piece of it, this is not a push for being a Bible scholar, and this is not a push for being observant of Jewish law. This is a push for saying, who am I and where am I going? And as I said, those 44 years of living here, I feel like I'm still on the journey. We feel a part of something bigger. We feel a sense of purpose, and I hope that after you read this book, you'll be more motivated to come on a trip with us and J Squared Adventures and to explore the different sites, but also to explore who we are and what our community is all about and where we're going.
Thanks for listening. Dive deeper into the world of travel on our J Squared Adventures website. That's j2adventures.com. And stay in the loop with our latest adventures on all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all under J2 Adventures. And if you enjoyed hanging out with us, don't forget to leave us a comment, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, travel safely and keep wondering. I'm Sorrel.
I'm Scott.
See you soon with the Wandering Jews.